Right, you may notice that I'm using for this the newest version, which is version 3, release candidate 2, which looks possibly slightly different to the version you may be using in college, but I wouldn't worry about it because you're going to be probably updating to this version at some point in the future. So when this version loads, it gives you a little sort of welcome page, which you may or may not turn off. You can turn it off there. I'll just turn that down for now. So let's start by looking at how to load images. Now, when you set up GIMP for the first time for use, one of the little tips I will show you is how to bookmark the location of where you want to have images. And you can have as many bookmarks as you like. So let's start with that. So you've got menus at the top here. So you've got use your traditional sort of file menu for anything to do like loading images, saving images and stuff. And then you've got all sorts of menus we can start looking at over the course of the actual during the course. There's also the help menu at the end, which is also useful to give you direct links to tutorials, give you tips of the day, and all sorts of wonderful things like that. Okay, so let's start to go via the help menu. Via the file menu. We're going to go to open. Now, all my files at the moment are set up to go to the samples, but let's imagine you haven't got that. So to do that, you'd have to go through manually. Now, GIMP, it's not a particularly great application sometimes to use with cloud storage, but you can still use it. You just have to go from the imaginary sort of hard drive location for the cloud storage. So if it's a Google Cloud, it's actually quite good. It integrates quite well. So Google Drive integrates quite well, but OneDrive I find doesn't. So to find OneDrive and to find your sample drives, you need to go through probably the hard drive letter first, and then maybe the subfolder, and then keep going. So I'm going to go through my account, and I'm going to be looking for, now this is at this point I can find my OneDrive. So I've got a personal OneDrive, I've got the college OneDrive, so I'm going to use college OneDrive, and then you can start going through folders. Okay, now when you get to a point where you have a folder which you want to use in future, without going into the folder, my little tip for you is to click the right mouse button and choose Add Bookmark. Now, the reason you do this is basically so that it actually adds it to a list of pre-existing folders down the left-hand side here. Now, you can see already, I've already added the bookmark samples, but if I click right mouse button and choose Add Bookmark for the first time, it will create this little bookmark here. And as I say, you can have as many as you like. There's even a little thing here to say add locations, so add more bookmarks. So in future, when I go to it, so all I need to do is click there. And if it's the only bookmark, it will actually automatically go to it anyway. So there's all the sample files we use on the course. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off by just playing around with some of the basic tools. So I'm going to suggest we loaded animals too, so I'm going to double click on that. Okay. Now I'm going to show you in a little bit how to zoom in and how to do things like that. But for now, I'm just going to leave that as it is. So I'll do it the same we do in session. So let's just first of all look at the tools. Now, each of the tools have one main feature, but each tool, or most of the tools, are multifunctional. So for example, if I go to the tool with paintbrush, not only is it paintbrush, but it's also pencil, it's also airbrush, it's also ink, and it's also what's called a multi-tool. So if I click on that with the right mouse button, I can actually change to the different tools. Okay. Whereas if I just go to any tool with the mouse hovering, it just gives you a list. That doesn't allow you to change. But if you click the right mouse button, then it allows you to change between the different tool options. Okay. And most do. Some, as you can see here, have quite a lot of different choices for one particular tool. So all the tools, just to save having 30 or 40 individual tools listed in the toolbar, it's actually grouped them together. So it's grouped them quite logically. So all the drawing tools, so like paintbrush, pen, pencil, and all those are grouped together. All the sort of selection tools are grouped together. All the sort of, measuring tools are grouped together, and so on and so on. Okay, so we're just going to start for now using paintbrush. So let's start with the default paintbrush. I'm not going to change anything down here yet, but these are your tool options, and you can see there's quite extensive changes to various options you can make. And when you go on to the image itself, at the moment I'm using paintbrush, so I'm just going to show you. If I just start drawing it around, you probably find actually I'll go with black. So I'm going to go with black. Now you might find when you started using it for the first time, it's quite a thickish brush. So you can actually increase and reduce your brush size. So size here, so you probably find it's probably about 50 or something, but I won't make it as big as that. But there's a simple brush. Now that is using paintbrush. If I click right mouse button on paintbrush, I can change it to pencil, which gives me a different shape. Not extensively different, but you found over time different uses for it. You've also got airbrush. Now airbrush is good because airbrush builds up. It starts off with what's called a low opacity. It starts off with like just putting maybe 20% paint on, and as you build up in the same area, it gets darker and darker. And you can change all these settings, of course. So it starts off at a certain baseline and increases. You can see it builds up over time. You've got ink, which again is similar to the other tools, tend to be a little bit thicker, tend to be, a bit thicker there, but that's fine. And then basically you've got, let me think. Oh, you've also got My Paintbrush. Now, My Paintbrush is quite a newish thing. It may not be on the older versions of GIMP. It's basically so you can set up your preference and have your own personalized paintbrush the way you want it. Great for when you've got a certain project you're working on. You can set up your paintbrush and it's all set up each and every time you come back to it. Now there's GIMP. Let's do a little bit of zooming in and zooming out. Let's start with that. So zooming in and zooming out. I know I've got a little piece of artwork there, probably artistic, but Anyway, zooming in onto an image, if you go to the center of where you want to zoom in and then hold the control button and then use the wheel on your mouse, that will actually allow you to zoom in and likewise to zoom out onto an area. Now, the reason I suggest doing it this way is this gives you total control, not only visually how far you zoom in, but also where you're zooming in. So, if you do that, so you zoom on a different part of the image, move your mouse to a different part of the image, and then zoom in, that's exactly where it goes. Now, of course, if you want to move the position of where you're looking on the image and you want to recenter to a different part, rather than zoom out and zoom back in, which is one way of doing it, rather than doing that, there's also something called the navigator, which is a sort of arrow on the bottom here. And it's always on the bottom right of the image you're working on. And if you click once on the navigator and keep the button pressed, as you move around in the little thumbnail, the main screen will change accordingly. And that allows you to move around within a zoomed part of an image. Likewise, you can still carry on zooming in further, and again, using the navigator, you've got total control how you move around. So you might find that useful when you're working on projects, which involve sort of fine detail within an image. So, okay, changing colors. Let's just go through the colors. You got what we could generally call the foreground and the background colors. Now, that's a bit misleading. Foreground doesn't mean that it's only used for foreground at all. So it doesn't mean that you can't use it in the background. It's just the names given to the colors. And traditionally, the colors start off as black for the foreground and white for the background. But we can change them by clicking on them once, and it will give you the color picker. I'll bring that into here. Now the color picker is quite good because what it actually allows you to do is choose one of 16 million different colors. So you can choose any color of the rainbow, absolutely anything from black through to white, through to all the reds, greens and blues in the middle. And it also records colors you've used in the past, so you can go back to them at a later date and use exactly the same color, which is quite good. But let's go through from the basics. So first of all, you need to use this thin bar to get the approximate color you want. So if you want a red or a green or a blue or what have you, this is where you get those particular colors. Okay. Now within each of these color schemes, you've got black and you've got white in the extremes, and you'll see that in a minute. So if I choose, for example, a nice reddish, I've got obviously dark reds up there, and there's a little example of what it would look like on the screen. And I've got, dark reds all the way down to the very bottom, which is pretty well black. That will be where the black will pretty well be all times. And likewise, if I go through, say, blue, I've got the same. I've got like the pastel blues there. I've got sort of bluey purples. I've got dark blues, darker blues still, and so on. So that's the way you choose your colours. Now, there's also another way of choosing colours, which is built into this, which is called the colour picker, which is really useful. So there's the colour picker, sometimes called eyedropper. So click on there and choose a colour from within your actual image. So I can choose a colour like that, and that's exactly that colour. Likewise, we click on there and choose a different colour, so maybe from the side of the fish. Yeah. So that's a way of choosing exact colours. Now, when you want to use colours again, or you think you might suspect that you might want to use colours again, you can add your colours to your palette. So there's the colour there I've just added. Now we're going to choose a different colour with the eyedropper. We're going to choose maybe a bluish colour. I can add that as well. So I can start building up a palette of colours. Okay, and it will cycle through those colours. So they're always there for you to use as well. So I'm going to click OK. So when I paint now, I'm not painting with black, I'm painting with that new colour. And if I go back to the colour picker, I can either reuse the colours I've already selected, or I can go and find a new colour. Okay. Now this might be a good opportunity to maybe talk about undo. GIMP has unlimited undo. It will remember every single thing you've done with an image. Now undo, you can obviously go through the menus, you can go through the edit menu and use undo. My preference is just use Control Z to undo instead. So Control Z once will undo the last thing, and Control Z again will undo the previous thing to that. Now you can keep going back over and over and over again, but one unique thing to GIMP is you can actually undo, but out of sequence. There's actually a facility to look at all the undos in order and just undo, say, the third undo, but leave the later undos. And you know that's quite a useful feature as well. But anyway, we'll probably cover that in a more advanced session. So I've undone everything to start with a clean slate, and I'm going to basically put my first name. I'm going to vandalize. And there you go. Oh, I'll put a line underneath. Okay, so that's the first little activity done. The second thing we're going to probably look at is bringing another image called Animals 5. Now I can close this image down. I can just simply click the cross there. And because the changes haven't been saved, it will say, do you want to save? Now, in college, I would suggest you click discard, only because if you save, everybody will load your updated version. And obviously, if you put your name on it, then it's going to have your name for the next group. Not a major problem, because every session normally, or every now and then at least, I'll recycle the images so they get reset back to their default. So that won't be a major problem. So discard changes. I go to File. I'll go to Open. Now notice it's automatically gone back to my one and only bookmark. It's not asked me where to go. It'll take me straight back. So I can straight away go to Animals 5. So it's a good excuse to have all your pictures organized. If not within one folder, but organized within a folder which has subfolders for the different, maybe holidays and what have you. Again, I'm going to use my little tip to zoom in. Now I might just zoom in from the center. There we go. So you can zoom in and you can zoom out. Okay. Now, another little tool to use is called the crop tool. Now it's got a number of different sort of shapes. On the new version, it looks like the crop tool on Word and Office, which is sort of like a box type shape. So that's your crop tool there. And what you do with your crop tool is you just simply drag the outline of the area you want to keep. Now, if you're not happy with it, if there's something that needs to be changed, so for example there, I'm a little bit close, you can modify what's going to happen. So you can actually go to the middle parts and you get boxes, or you can go to the corners and you get small boxes where you can bring in both the top maybe and the bottom, with the top and side, what have you. Two areas at once. You can move around. Okay, and once you're happy with this, then there's a number of ways of doing it, but I just double click in the actual bit you want to keep, and it selects. So basically what's happened there is I've removed the outer bit. It's actually remembered the original canvas size. That's not a problem, we can sort that out later. And now I can re-zoom in on the new part. And again, I can use the navigator. There you go. So I can get to the way I want. Now, a little test for you, and we will do this in session, is just to practice the zooming in. I'll get you to zoom in just on the eye of the fish. So obviously, if you just move your mouse to the eye, press down Control, and then use the wheel on your mouse, you should be able to zoom in quite close. In fact, there's nothing to stop you zooming in just to 1 pixel, really. You know, that's as far as it's allowing me. And then you can navigate just to center that, although you'll find that that's not as easy as you think, because it will move so much. So you might want to zoom out, recenter it. Oh, it's not easy. And then zoom back in again. And that will be my eye, although you can't see it's the eye. So if you zoom out, you'll be able to see it's the eye then. Well done. Right, well that covers the basic introduction to GIMP. I mean, obviously there's a lot more we can do. For example, we're not looked at different brushes, but these sort of things you can figure out yourself. So there are brushes which actually put things in. For example, the classic is the green pepper. So if I just zoom out of that for a sec, I can go back to the paintbrush tool, I can change it to paintbrush, and then when I use green pepper, it literally paints a green pepper on my item. But also there's brushes, number of brushes there which will paint, and they will generally paint with the foreground color, but you can use different keys to change it to background color. Okay. There's also these sorts of brushes which do things like speckles, and you just have to play, really. Some of them work best with single stamps, some will work best with moving around, but we'll cover these at a later session. Okay, so I'm going to close that down.